Check 1, 2. Check 3, 4. Check 5, 6. Check 7, 8. Check 9, 10. Check 11, 12. Check 13, 14. Check 15, 16. Check 17, 18.
It is Monday, March 14th, and I call this meeting of the Anthony Wayne Board of Education to, whatever. To order, that's the word. Lost my brain for a moment. Okay. Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Here.
Mrs. Brent?
Here.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Prine?
Here.
All right. Would you rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I will say welcome back to all the administration. That was a lot more voices than we've had for a long time. All right, first thing on our agenda is to approve the minutes from our last regular meeting and then the special meeting that we had on February 22nd. Any questions?
I'll make a motion to.
Okay.
I'll second.
Jeff. Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Prine?
Yes.
All right. Next is the treasurer's report and financials.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is to approve the monthly financials for February 2022. Under item B is to approve the donations as listed. We are always very thankful for these. Under item C, I ask that the board award the bus bid to Cardinal Bus Sales. We held a bid open on March 2nd, and we did only have the one bid, but it's for 3 buses. And the purchase price is $310,020, but we also get $45,000 for 3 buses that we will, from the state. So we're gonna trade those buses in. So
Okay.
we'll get, the net cost is $175,000 after we get the funds.
Okay.
So, but the boards, you approve the whole
Right.
contract bid, but, and that'll be a permanent improvement purchase. So basically, the way it worked last time is we had to make the purchase
And
and
then,
pay for it, and then submit everything, and then we get reimbursed. So I don't know if that process is still gonna be the same, but, I will submit everything as soon as I can. So, but we will be getting, almost half of that reimbursed, so,
that's good.
yeah.
The-
So we'll take it.
If we're selling the buses back then or trading them in, that should come though off
Right.
at
it
point
do-
of sale.
It does. It's already deducted off here. This is the
Oh, that
total
is?
cost.
Okay.
Yeah, the actual price per bus was, and we chose a couple options that we have been doing in the past.
Okay.
The actual base price was $103,620, and then we chose some LED lights, stainless steel rear exhaust, and then 3-year bumper-to-bumper warranty, which is, we've been getting those items on our buses.
Okay.
And then we're trading in 3 buses, and we get $2,000 a trade. So this is a net cost to the
Okay.
board.
All right.
So,
Is the video separate? The video, do we install that?
the cameras,
Or the cameras?
it's included.
That's all included in that package too, yeah. That's on everything we do now.
Yeah, the last time we got it, I think it was broken out, and maybe that's what made you think of that. We're using some grant money to pay for that from the safety grant, so that's why I had it to break it out last time, so. Under item D is to approve several grants. We have the Martha Holding Jennings grant going to Waterville for $15,000. We have Project Lead the Way for $15,000 going to the junior high. This is actually a 2-year grant, so it's $30,000, but we'll approve $15,000 this year, $15,000 next year. And then we had, this is the ARP additional ESSER 3 money, ARP ESSER 3, that we got. And I realized I did not have the board approve that because at the time I thought it was just an addition to ESSER 3, and then they said we had to create a special cost center for it. So I needed to go ahead and add that. And this is some of this money, or all of this money, will be used to help fund the 1-year temporary teachers again for next year. And then we did receive some ESSER preschool funds. And since we will be adding a classroom, that we'll use this for some supplies for that, to help set that classroom up.
Which building are we adding that to?
Monclova. Anything else? Okay, and
No.
then,
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I just,
and then the last item I have is to approve the bond refunding resolution. So this is like refinancing your mortgage. Basically, these bonds go back to 2000 from an initial project, so we've refunded them anytime that we could. This will be the last time we can refund these. I did talk to our underwriter today, and he said he's not sure if it's going to happen. The rule of thumb is 3%. We're at a 4.12% savings, but he said that the market has gone crazy since last week. So when we made the decision to do this, the rate was still good. And we're doing a direct placement, so that saves a little bit of time. However, when you do a direct placement, the bank will not lock in the rate until it's approved. So until I have a signed resolution, which will be after this meeting, hopefully, first thing tomorrow, he can go. So if the rate is affected, it might not
might
happen,
not
so.
do it, okay.
And at that case, we'll just,
Put
we
it on.
won't proceed with it, and I'll put a note with him, he'll send me a letter and all that. So there'll be nothing else you have to do, but I will let you know for sure, because it's a small refunding, but it's, I always say every penny counts.
Absolutely,
So I feel that it's worth it to do anytime it meets the rule of thumb, so.
And if it's not the right time to do it right now, we can revisit it
We-
one
yes.
more time, you said?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And then the other thing, we did agree to move our April meeting to April 13th due to a conflict I had, but I did mention that I realize it is the last Wednesday of Lent, so I didn't know if we wanted to meet earlier, if there was any conflicts for anyone, we could meet at 5 o'clock or whatever time works for everyone, I don't know work schedules, or if you are okay having it at 6,
It's fine by me, but I don't,
6 is fine for me.
we can make it a different time, makes no difference.
5 wouldn't help me, so 6 is fine.
What's that?
6 is fine.
Okay,
6 works?
Okay.
so that's from
I was
the
going to say, or
11th.
we could even do an 8 o'clock meeting in the morning if we wanted to. Oh, wait, no, we can't. Excuse me, I'm driving back from Columbus that day, sorry.
Oops.
You guys.
Yeah, that's why we're moving it, right?
Yes, yes. Well,
Early, Monday was your.
yeah, it's, my presentation's on Monday that I'm participating in at 2:30.
It's
Oh.
now Wednesday.
Yeah.
I hadn't changed it yet, so it's 13th, from Monday to Wednesday, the 13th.
Or if we wanted to do 8 o'clock on the 14th, I don't know, does the 14th work for you? I don't know. I threw out 2 dates, just trying to,
Yeah, I think you just stick with the 13th.
Okay.
Seems
13th
like that
is-
works for
if
everybody.
that works for
6 is
everyone?
fine.
Well, you can do this,
I can do it.
you can do it, it was
can do it.
just,
I can do it.
yeah. So,
It's cast in stone.
okay,
Okay.
at 6 o'clock. And that is all I have.
Save, okay. Jane objects. All right. On that note, we need a motion to approve all of the
I'll make that
items
motion.
on, was that Kyle? And a second?
I'll second.
Jana. Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Prine?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And now Superintendent Educational Reports, Jim.
Thank you. Strategic planning update, just want to let everybody know that we have moved our retreat that was going to be scheduled for the 21st of this month to April 27th. After consulting with the consultant, we decided that that was probably the best move, to move it midweek too, with subs and state testing coming up, and a couple of other reasons, we decided to move it to that date. We've invited over 60 people, still waiting to hear back from those individuals. A lot of community members, administrative staff, parents, and some students. So I'm excited about that as well. Kevin and Lori are going to meet with a group of high school students and the student council to gain some feedback from them this Wednesday in regards to if you remember those questions that we put out through the management team meeting that we had, and those small groups in the community met. So we're excited to get that feedback as well and put it in with the other feedback we have to use at the retreat. So April 27th, and
Same here and same
yeah,
time.
same here, or same location, same time,
Okay,
as of right now.
okay.
Before we move on to Chris and his presentation about the phone systems, I do want to mention that obviously we had a lot of success this winter. At the April board meeting, I'll talk a little bit more about that. In athletics, we also had success in band. We had, I think one of the best plays I've seen in my time here in the district, the Adams Family Play. And just a lot of great things happened this winter, and we'll highlight those in April. I just want to mention that to you. Chris, we'll go to Chris and Matt will present on our phone system.
Thank you. My name is Chris Hamady. I'm the Director of Technology for the school district, and with me is Mr. Matt Dick, who will be starting off our presentation on upgrading the AW phone system. Matt?
Yes, so we were informed this fall that our current phone system is no longer going to be supported by the manufacturer as of next January 2023. And they've been given the explanation that this has been accelerated to move over to cloud-based systems, has been accelerated by the whole COVID thing as everybody struggles to work from home. The IP phones that are cloud-based, you can plug them in anywhere at your office desk, so you could be at home with your work phone. They also have apps where you can make calls right from your apps. So rather than risk being in the next January in the middle of the school district and have something go wrong with our school phone system that we can't fix, we thought it's probably time to move over to a cloud-based system.
Thank you, Matt. So if we look at the scope of what we're dealing with here, we're talking about 71.5 square miles, 9 buildings, 455 total phones in those 9 buildings. And like Matt said, the voice over IP telephony lends itself well to such a huge scope. Any network data port can be used for a phone, so if we have staff members moving rooms, we don't have to jump through as many hoops when we have them switch rooms. They can take their phone, they can move it to the new room and plug in, and their voicemail and their phone extension travels with them. The voice over IP phones are more portable, again, that they can be moved around. The scalability of voice over IP phones, like Matt mentioned, is much greater in that if we want people to utilize newer technologies, those newer technologies can be programmed directly into voice over IP. An example of that is many of these voice over IP phone solutions, you can download an app on your cell phone and you can make phone calls as if you were in your office in the district. So there's all of this really cool technology that comes along with voice over IP. And again, the advanced features such as that are not normally found in analog or hybrid systems. So the system components for voice over IP are, as they appear up on the screen here, you start with a cloud-based voice over IP system, and the vendor provides that cloud infrastructure. You need handsets that work with the voice over IP system, and those are either leased or they are purchased. We need good network cabling in all of the classrooms to connect to all of the phones. Excuse me. We also need network switches that both carry the data from the phones, but they also provide power to all of the phones. We don't need to plug the phone into a wall jack for AC power. The power comes from the switch and goes over the data wire to the phone itself. You also need a telecommunications provider. Right now, our telecommunications provider is Buckeye Telesystem, and we were told by NOWACA that the pricing that we currently have with Buckeye Telesystem, NOWACA doubts that we could get a better price. They said they feel confident that we're getting an extremely competitive rate. So we did an assessment of all the switches in the district that we need to support this endeavor, and we need minimally 18 network switches installed. And now what we're in the process of doing is going through all the data closets, and we're trying to find out which switches can we reallocate to the phone network so that we can buy new switches for the Wi-Fi and the data that the students use, and those would be eligible for E-rate funding, and we would get a 50% discount on anything that we buy that falls under those guidelines. So, you know, worst case scenario, we can't submit anything to E-rate. You're looking at $130,000, but I feel confident it's going to be fairly low. We're going to get it down around that, I believe, 75 to 100,000 mark. So we should save some money. So one of the things that we were told is that voice over IP phones require Cat5e, which is a standard of cabling with a rated speed. But what we found out in looking at our buildings was when the cabling was installed, they installed really high grade Cat5 cabling that supported something called 350 megahertz. In other words, it's fast. And we went and certified all of the cabling that we had that was Cat5, passed the certification for Cat5e, and then NOWACA gave us their voice over IP telephones, and we plugged them into ports in every single building and not one failed. So we're confident that the cabling does not need to be upgraded at this point, but we might encounter some issues. I don't think that we'll need to do what it says on this slide, replace all of the network cabling. All right, so here are the quotes that we have. And so the conundrum that we're in is, you know, you can always look at the lowest cost provider, but some of the other providers give us some very interesting capabilities. So let me explain what I mean by that. The more vendors that you have involved in projects, you increase complexity. NOWACA is already the district's network administration. They manage our network. Every piece of copper wire, every piece of fiber optic, every switch, NOWACA manages. So if we were to go with another vendor other than NOWACA for telephones, if we encounter any issues, then we have to get NOWACA in touch with the vendor, and they have to sort out the issues, but NOWACA is the only one that can actually make the changes to the network. NOWACA also, let me share this with you, and it's probably going out over the live stream. NOWACA manages, let me see how many here, in Northwest, actually around the state, they manage 37 different school districts' telephones. If you look at Buckeye Telesystem, I know that they manage Toledo Publics and they manage Bedford, so they only manage 2. I'm not aware of any district right now that's using Executone. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Let me go back to the slide here. We also have the fact that NOWACA's phone system is completely a managed solution, meaning that if we need a new phone in an office, we just call up NOWACA and say, we need a new phone, it's for this person, and would you please set up the voicemail? And they do everything. So we won't be adding to the workload onto some of the departments that are already extremely busy. So for a little bit more money, we're getting a managed solution where NOWACA does everything. The Buckeye solution, we would be responsible, once Buckeye gets it installed, we would be responsible for all changes moving forward. And the gentleman at Bedford, he said while he loves the Buckeye phones and they don't really have a lot of problems with them, the configuration portal, he said, was a little iffy. So he wasn't too keen on that. Let's see here. I think we're good. Does anybody have any questions?
Executone, our current vendor?
Yes.
So which NOACA program are you recommending? Or are you thinking that you're
I
recommending?
would not go with Cisco, and the reason that I would not go with Cisco is for one reason only. If the Cisco phone breaks, you have to buy another Cisco phone. They're one of the most expensive IT vendors in the world. But the NOACA Sangoma system, that one, I've been told, not only can you buy replacement devices from Sangoma that are reasonably priced, but if another phone manufacturer follows a certain voice over IP standard, we could even buy their brand of phones. So it's not a proprietary solution like the Cisco.
So that's where you're leaning, is the NOACA Sangoma?
That's where I'm leaning, yeah.
So you have the upfront cost of the switches, obviously, hopefully less than the 130,000, and then you have the annual costs, and then Chris has started to total those things up as you go through the years there. You know, so I think at this point, what we're gonna do is work with NOACA. So just a little bit back about NOACA. So NOACA is our ITC, and so school districts throughout the state they work with an ITC somewhere, and NOACA represents most of Northwest Ohio, and even do some services with districts actually across the state. They're one of the larger ones in the state. So as long as I've been in this district, we've always worked with NOACA, and I think for forever, it seems. I don't even know how far back that relationship goes. But from data entry and things that flow through them to ODE and all of that. And so they provide our wiring, basically our internet that comes here to the district, you know, through the cabling and so forth. And so when you look at this, I think, as Chris has shared, you know, you have a managed solution that allows, basically, if there are issues, they're going to be there to troubleshoot that and take care of it. Versus, Matt, would you say that now when we have to troubleshoot things, it's a little bit more difficult because there's a couple different, you're working with Executone, you're working with Buckeye, then you may have to do some things and try to figure out what's going on, where I think in these managed solutions, it's going to be them figuring that out.
And that is all going to be included in the lease, that?
All the
troubleshooting,
management? Yes, all the management is included in that annual cost.
And the hardware, so the initial, I mean, all the actual phones and.
Correct. The numbers that I showed you at the beginning, all of that is included in the annual cost as well.
Whereas with Buckeye, if you needed to move somebody or you had an issue, you pay them to come out on top of that, right? Moves, adds, and changes.
Could be, if something had to be uninstalled and reinstalled, that's a possibility.
And then is this renewed every few years or something, or how does that?
Right.
You know, I think we could talk to NOACA about the length of a contract. I don't think it's set in stone. What I did up here, the smallest contract was 3 years. So I gave you 3-year contracts. NOACA's contract was 5. And I guess by law, you're allowed up to 5-year contracts.
And with any vendor, I mean, you're going to be probably looking at a 3 to 4 to 5 year.
Right.
Yeah. Usually it's 3.
And that hardware then, is there a lifespan on that, or it infinitely gets replaced, or?
Well, that's the thing. So one of the things that they talked about was there is a limited lifespan on all of this hardware, and it doesn't matter who you go with.
Yeah.
It could be Executone or Buckeye or NOACA. After a period of time, and I think the last set of phones lasted 10 years, I believe is what NOACA told us. But after 10 years, the support, they no longer support that device. They can no longer patch that device with security patches. Therefore, at some point, it has to be replaced.
So in 10 years, we're probably going to be talking about this same conversation we're having now about, you know, do we have the right wiring? Do we have the right infrastructure? Do we have the devices and so forth? As things potentially change. You know, the hardwire of the old, of lasting 30 or 40 years, has really kind of gone by the wayside to some degree.
So we're really looking at it, because the top two sounds like you're excluding those. So it's a $30,000
Yeah, it
difference
just
between one.
seems very expensive to me.
Yeah.
Very expensive. And if you look at the equipment that Executone's spec'ing, it's the same equipment that Buckeye's spec'ing for a lot less money.
Yeah.
So is it safe to say that hypothetically in year 4, that the difference would still be $30,000 or with inflation between, say, the Nowaka and Buckeye?
It'll be 77.9 versus, oh wait, I have it in my notes here. 77.9 versus,
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, if you're projecting this to last for 10 years, it's not just those numbers that stop at 3 years.
43.
You're looking at $30,000 for the additional 7 years beyond that.
But if we're in a 3-year contract, we could start all over at that point, in essence, or,
you can always renegotiate. It's 77 versus 43 for the Buckeye solution, once you pay off all the handsets.
Right.
But I think that's a huge chunk of change. $70,000 to pay the first year, it would take you almost 3 years to make that up. Because it's 27 and change, I don't remember what the exact number was. If you look at the years 2 and 3, if you spent that 70,000 to purchase the handsets versus leasing to own the Buckeye system, I think it's 27,000 a year difference that you would have to pay over 2.5 years or whatever it is to make up that 70,000.
Chris,
You know,
did they only give a lease option? Did they give a purchase option?
Buckeye was the only one that gave us the option to purchase the handsets up front. And you can see, if you divide it by 3, the difference is, what is that? 23,000 a year if we spend 70 the first year between the annual costs.
And is this separate, so to speak, from the network? So when you have network issues and down, if your internet's down and this phone system's still independent from that?
Well,
Or is it-
see, that's interesting that you brought that up because it's all kind of related.
Yeah,
If you're having a switch issue, it could affect data, it could affect voice. So all of that is tied together, which is another reason that, I lean toward Nowaka because they manage all the switches. It doesn't matter if they're voice switches and it doesn't matter if they're data switches. Even if we went with Buckeye, Nowaka's going to have to manage the voice switches anyways. So having Nowaka manage all of this, to me, it makes sense because they know the ins and outs of the network. And the last thing we want is for telecommunications to be down in a crucial time and spend a lot of time trying to fix it.
What is, if everything is voice over IP, what if we are down for an extended period of time where there's an emergency? Will we have some wired backups or what?
Matt, you
You
wanna
can have
talk
some
about
landlines in each building for backup. You can have, direct from the Buckeye
Okay,
that's independent of this system, so at least we've got a couple lines for calls.
well, everyone's got a computer in the
Yeah, and the
pocket.
other thing too is the radio systems that we have now, right to the sheriff's office and that as well. It's, we have several ways of communicating now that we, 10 years ago, never had.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
so that's good news too.
And cell phones,
Yeah.
almost everyone in the classroom will have one, but. Matt,
other-
what's your thought on the lease versus the purchase?
I've always liked purchase
Me
and
too.
own them because, when I got hired here, we were renting a lot of stuff and, we were able to buy, so the last phone system I bought for $1 billion was, $20,000 for the whole kit caboodle and still running 6 years from now, you know, so. But it would be interesting to see more of a 5-year out to see, because you would think that the purchase option would, the price would start dropping off after a few years. You could see some savings, so I don't know if Milwaukee could look into that, or.
Yeah, we can meet with Todd Hug as their director and meet with them and ask them those questions. You know, obviously, we want to have a good system. We don't want to overspend for that system. You know, I know that I prefer buying my car versus leasing the car, so I understand that piece of it. There's advantages of leasing, you know, when we talk about some like devices and so forth, from a, you know, management of those devices and so forth. But then if you can see a savings, can you make that up if you had issues, if you just hired somebody to fix the issues, for example? So we'll ask those questions, and I'll get back to you guys on what that looks like and what our next steps are. We just wanted to present this to you so you kind of had an idea of kind of where we're at in the options that we have moving forward. And our goal would be to do, whatever we do is to try to do it this summer in an effort to not interrupt with school, like people are there for the most part, and have it in place for the next school year.
And that's the last thing I wanted to bring up, is all the vendors told me that it's difficult to get products right now. So the sooner we can order, the better. We'll be assured that we're going to get it in on time.
And will it be an all or nothing switch, in the sense of, I know that Executive Tone isn't still supporting them, but if we were only to get half of them in, can we
Right, we've
start?
got till January until they're unsupported, so.
But we have the laws that we have to deal with that are requiring us to put things in place, and we can't avoid that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
To be continued.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is state assessments. Let me go back to this. And I just wanted to mention to all of you, we started actually with the high school on March 1st, the required ACT test for our juniors. That basically continues really into April, and then we start makeup testing and so forth for the students who missed those assessments. And so just be aware that that's going to continue into April as we come back from spring break as well, and some are happening next week as our students move through that process and we comply with state law. Spring break is March 26th through April 3rd, just mentioning that. And then one other item I wanted to mention too is, with all the redistricting and conversations about the maps and so forth, I think one thing that's getting lost in this conversation is, there's a discussion about potentially moving the May 3rd election. We have always had voting days as a day off for students and professional development for us too, because honestly, it's a safety and security issue in my mind. And so we've tried to avoid that as much as we can. There's discussion about moving the date. Hopefully, if they move the date, it's sometime into the non-school year.
Yeah.
But we're still planning on having our May 3rd date, because we've got scheduled presenters coming in and trainings, and yeah, it's hard to just stop that, because
Right.
we end up paying for us to do that. So, it's just not something that we're looking to do right now. Hopefully that'll get settled. We'll still have the May 3rd date, and we'll move on, and they can do their business. 3 of our school buildings are used, the high school, Monclova, and Waterville, for voting. And they've closed down other locations in the recent past, the last couple of years, and consolidated them into the schools. So we got more and more voters coming in. So just be aware of that, and we're monitoring that moving forward.
Do they have a time when they're going to make a decision? That's 6 weeks away, roughly.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about it, that's all I can say. And we'll let them discuss and hopefully they'll
and
come to a
everything
quick
else. Okay.
resolution
All
on
right.
that, so. I do want to mention in my informational items, number 4, you can just cross that out, because you'll see later on that that bus driver has resigned that position, so I'm going to go ahead and cross that out of my agenda. Item B, overnight trips. This is the time of year that we start planning for some overnight trips for different spring and then fall as well because of summer. And we start doing those types of things over the next couple of months. So you're going to see a lot of events where if they're going overnight, we're asking, or out of state for that matter, we're going to ask for those to be approved by you, so you have those 7 there. DEC, I'll mention too, they just had their state competition and did very well down in Columbus. And so you have some students that will be going on to Atlanta for that international competition. Item C, board policies. Our board policy committee met, and I kind of gave you guys an overview of what, how we go through those recommendations. These are all based on legislation and case law that's out there, and those recommendations are listed in those changes. The chamber membership is something that we have done for several years, where we work with our business partners, and they actually meet here in this building once a month. And this is the chamber really that represents kind of White House, and it goes into some other areas of our community as well. Also to mention that I will be speaking at the September meeting of the Waterville Chamber of Commerce, and we're going to have their luncheon actually here for that, so here in this room. So looking forward to that in September. So I would ask that you, unless you have questions, approve A through D at this time in one motion.
Any questions on any of the items on there? If not, I need a motion to approve.
I'll move.
Gina?
I'll second.
Andy? Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Prine?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And superintendent personnel recommendations.
Thank you. You're going to see over the next couple of months a lot of action in our personnel recommendations and hopefully not as many retirements or resignations, but a lot of action to get ready for the next school year as well. And so as we do this, just know that it's probably going to, next couple of months, be several pages. And if you ever have any questions, please feel free to ask me, okay? The first one, the resignations and retirements, I do want to mention, and I'll let, you want to talk about it, or you want me to
Nope.
talk about it? Okay, I'll talk about it. Jenny Moningham, our assistant treasurer, is going to retire. She's worked with Carrie for many years. I won't tell you how many years. But we're going to hate to see her leave. It's time for her to retire, and she's looking forward to that retirement. And she's been an outstanding member of our office here, and we do appreciate her service. I can't thank her enough. So she'll be retiring in end of June, beginning of July there. And then, let's see here. And Mr. Herman had shared with you earlier those one-year temporary resignations and that fact that we're turning around and hiring, I think, most of those individuals back in the same meeting. And those are based on just things that we did last year and some of the ESSER money and how that's flowing into the district. Item B, employment. I am excited to announce that, with Jamie Dayton retiring at the end, March 28th, I believe, Jana Leininger? Is that- Jana Leininger, okay. I apologize for that. She comes from Waseon, where she was EMS director and the superintendent's secretary for 7 years. And we're excited to have her. I know she's already met with Jamie and gone over some initial things and has got a lot of great experience. So we're excited for her to step into that role and help us out with registration and those things moving forward. We're excited to have a bus driver to hire on the list, as you see there as well. And Tammy for that and the training that they go through her office. And then, you see some other staff there. We have also in there a new guidance counselor that's going to replace Karen Dixler. Michelle has been a longtime community member here, has students either graduated or students here. And so, we're excited about her coming into the high school as well. Item C, substitute employees, you see those individuals listed there. We're always excited about our volunteers in item D. You have item E, the contract amendments as listed per our recommendation. So at this time, I would ask that you approve A through E, unless you have questions.
I do, one, I asked Mr. Herman, with the 1 year that we haven't resigned and coming back, are those positions that we're gonna want to, without using ESSER funds in the future? I know you said that they're.
We actually would have to look at it each year.
Okay.
We have planned for them. We thought it to be very beneficial this year, and so we had employed them for this year, have found that kids are benefiting from it.
Right.
And so because of having the ESSER funds for this coming year as well, we have allocated those funds to go towards being able to have these positions again. So I think that it would have to be looked at and determined at the end of the year, when you're looking at the overall finances and so forth.
Absolutely.
But we have found them to be beneficial, and yes, we will continue to try to look at how best to serve the students and the type of positions that they're doing, but
Absolutely. Yeah, if they're beneficial, I definitely think
Yeah.
we should look.
And just so you know, ESSER funds have to be spent by September of 2023.
Right.
So we won't be able to fund them after that.
The other thing I'd mention too is, and so when you look at some of these positions and you see where they're at, what we did was, these people are going in and in some cases filling in for staff that had those positions, and we moved those staff to be intervention coaches, where they're working to basically during the school year to provide interventions and/or work with our tutors to coordinate interventions for students. And so it's kind of like a shell game and how we set this up and so forth. Ultimately, I think some of these individuals will seek full-time employment through a regular contract, whether it, I'm assuming most of them will be through us because of retirements, things that happen, over the next year or so. And then also, like Mr. Herman said and Carrie said, some of this is based on funding through ESSER monies and so forth. And so, and this is the cliff. It happened back when, in the late 2000s, when federal money came in and said, hire people, and then it went away, and then what did we do? How did we find ways to fund that if we really felt that was necessary to continue? And in these situations, obviously, we make those assessments each and every year based on enrollments, based on services we're trying to provide, and so forth. And so I think as we continue to evaluate these positions, it's also evaluating other positions because of how that shell game went to move people around.
And I'll say too that we are very, very pleased. A lot of these individuals were hired towards the end of the year last year. Very pleased with the quality of the individuals. And yes, the one thing I will agree is that we work very hard if we know that they are, doing a wonderful job. And as other positions come available, we do encourage them to try to, transition into some of those other full-time contracts as well.
Yeah, and so we're in this time period too, I'll mention this, that, we're looking at enrollment numbers and looking at next year and trying to assess, as we have positions come open, can we do some things to use attrition potentially? We're not seeing that right now. Some years we can, because the enrollment of a grade moves up into another building, and then you have some flexibility of moving staff around and maybe eliminating a position for a time period to save money to the district. And there's times like, I think where we're going into this fall, we're probably not gonna be able to do that. we're actually seeing an increase in special education students. And so we have a few positions that we've already are advertising for next year.
Fantastic.
You know, and so it just depends on all of those numbers
Right.
as we continue to move forward.
Perfect, thank you, guys. Appreciate
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
it. Want to make a motion to approve?
That was Kyle. In a second, please.
Jeff?
And Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes?
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Prine?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do these, okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is approving a new 5-year contract for superintendent. We had spoke about this. His current contract ends in, help me,
August of next
August
week.
of '23. But at an 18-month prior, we're able to extend them, or to renew their contract for another 5-year, it says right there, term anyways, so. Any questions on approving that? If not, I need Jeff
I'll second.
and Kyle. Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Prine?
Yes.
And then the same for Carrie, for the treasurer. As we had just mentioned, they're both on the same schedule.
We'll make a motion for that?
I'll second it.
And Andy. And Carrie, would you please call roll on that one?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Prine?
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you, and this is, I mean, we have been very, very pleased with all your work and your commitment, and we look forward to an additional 5 years on your project.
Me too, thank you.
All right, at this point, we will recognize visitors, and I think we only had one that asked to speak. Sandy Yakabek, okay, Yakavek. Yakabek, okay. I hadn't said that one out loud, so, all right. We'll give you 5 minutes to speak, and he's got the,
Hello, everyone. Okay, this might be a little choppy because I just kind of decided today to say something. I wasn't going to, and then I thought, well, if I say something, then maybe I won't keep waking up in the middle of the night thinking about it. Okay, first of all, my main question is, who decided that SEL, social emotional learning, is okay? If you all recall, the canceled resolution by Paulo de Maria, a couple things in his resolution, whereas black male students lag far behind their white counterparts in several measures of educational attainment, including graduation rates, which keeps gainful employment out of reach. Another one, whereas starting as early as preschool, black male students are affected disproportionately by suspensions, expulsions, zero tolerance. My point with that is, there is a new one out. I hope you've seen that. He is also one of the signers behind social emotional learning. In my opinion, social emotional learning is nothing more than sending your child to a psychologist or a therapist every day. How many of you have actually looked into the people who developed the program, learned about them, their ideologies, what they believe, what they think your children should know? What happened to the parents? When did the Department of Education decide that this was okay? What gives them the right to be in charge of your child's social, emotional learning? To me, your emotions, your social, whatever. It's learned as you grow. You learn this. You can't teach someone how to be happy. You send a child to school all day, and they're learning how to be happy and helpful and everything, but then when they go to a different environment and it's not that way, I think you're confusing them. I do have a couple examples. I try not to be too choppy here. With my own grandchildren. My granddaughter's 6 years old, and I was babysitting for her, and I went over there one day, and she goes, "Come on into my bedroom, Grandma, I want to show you all my dolls." So she had her Barbie dolls and other dolls. She had the Avenger dolls. And she showed me the boy Avenger. This is a girl. She knows it's not a girl doll. So why all of a sudden did she decide that this is a girl doll? She just didn't make it up. And then, the thing I'm bringing up too is that most of you, I hope, would know the age of reason is 13, when a child can really think about, decide, reason their decisions. My 4-year-old grandson, now maybe you've had this happen, maybe it's not normal to you, but to me, his sister, I don't know if she pushed him or hit him or something. I think a normal 4-year-old is gonna go up to her, hit her back if she hits him. If she pushes him, he's gonna push her, yell, "Mom, she hit me or pushed me." He's not gonna run up to his sister, push her, and say, "Stop bullying me." Again, that age, they aren't old enough to really reason the concepts they're being taught. Another example, my son-in-law taped the ice skating from the Olympics. My granddaughter likes to watch the skating, so we had the skating on. The 4-year-old literally got in her face and was yelling at her to turn off the ice skating because it was hurting his feelings. Again, are they being taught concepts they cannot understand? Another thought I had was, when I was reading about the ESSER funds, a certain percentage of the ESSER funds had to be used for non-academic courses, training, what have you. Is that's what's paying for social emotional learning. Are your teachers qualified? Are they psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists? Are they able to handle the reactions of some of the children to these concepts that they're learning? I don't think so. I'm just one person. I haven't talked to a lot of people, and that's why I also believe that people who are opposed to the way I think, we need to have a conversation. Anything that goes on here within the school, the kids, whatever, it needs to be discussed, because if we don't sit down and talk about it, we'll never come together. It'll never change, and we'll always be mad at each other. And that's going right down to the kids. They just had an article in the paper, Florida school. Kids were arrested, grade school.
Thank you, Mrs. Yakovic. All right, anything else from anyone? If not, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that final motion.
Andy, second.
I'll second.
Jana? And Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes,
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Prine?
Yes.
and the note on here is incorrect. Our next meeting is April 13th at 6. Yep. All right. Thank you.